Okay, so for problem number 35, we have 9 to the x less than 4 to the x. And we're asked to solve this graphically. So to solve it graphically, you have to graph these in your calculator. And so that's the first step. And then what you want to do is find out where they intersect at. Oops. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to graph 9 raised to the x. And then I'm going to graph 4 raised to the x. And I know that they intersect when x equals 0. I know that's one spot because 9 raised to the 0 equals 1. And 4 raised to the 0 equals 1. So I'm going to go to zoom. And I'm just going to choose a standard, option number 6, and then I'll just graph it and see what it does. And so they look very similar, but you can tell they're different, okay? And so what we're looking for is when 9 to the x, which is the blue line, is less than or below 4 to the x. So we're looking for when the blue line is beneath the red line. Now, it looks like it takes place at x equals 0, but it's kind of hard to tell how far that goes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my window from, let's do like -10 in the x direction, and then the max value 1, just 1, because I'm looking at everything to the left of the y-intercept. And now for my y value, I'm going to put my y-min at 0 and my y-max at 1, because we know it crosses at 1. And I'll do like 1.1. Okay? Then I'm going to hit graph. And now as I look at it, it looks like the blue line is lower than the red line, but I've just got to zoom in tighter over in this area to see. Or what's another way to do that?
Look at the table.
Look at the table. Great answer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the table. So if I hit second graph, I can look at the table. Now my red values are 9 to the x, right? So this is like 9 to the x right here. Well, I'll write it down here. 9 to the x. And this is 4 to the x. And we want to know when 9 to the x is less than 4 to the x. So if I pick this value here, this is 2 times 10 to the -50, where this one is 4 times 10 to the -32. Which one is smaller? The -50. That's because it's like 49 zeros followed by, so it's like 0.49 zeros and then 3. And this one's like 0.31 zeros and then a 5. Does that make sense? And so if we continue to go down the graph and look at those values, we'll see that the blue line is always just a little bit lower, always a little bit lower than the red. Well, it's not a little bit lower, it's significantly lower, right? And that would make sense, right? Because when I put in a negative value for x, it's 1 over 9 raised to that value. Does that make sense? So I'm just going to let that go for a second. I'm actually going up instead of down, but I'm just verifying where it's at. Okay, does that make sense? So what we're going to say is this occurs when x is less than 0.